Hello, this is Johnsen. You might also know me as the best mid lane in LCS, or at the very least you will soon enough, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Svenskeren, who is a veteran Danish jungler. And actually, where I want to start this interview, Svenskeren, is a lot of people who even think they're old school fans actually won't know the origin story of Svenskeren because they're all going to think like, oh yeah, I remember he came in with like that Copenhagen Wolves team in like LCS when there was EU LCS. But what they don't know is you were around even in season 2. In fact, a piece of trivia for people who don't know is you played with loads of the season 2 pros in a bunch of teams. And as we'll get to soon, you even went to some of the tournaments that had the big teams. But one team I want to ask about initially was you were in a really early version of SK Gaming with the notorious Carlos, obviously Ocelot at the time. There was Kevin and Nif. At the time, if people don't know, Kevin actually played like ADC because that was like only just a thing or whatever at the time. And obviously, there was when they did that swap where Candy Panda came up the team. And they had Youngbuck even, who was the coach, obviously, later of G2 for like, these are all like super well-known players. Like the question I have is this. Oh, we're going to ask about some of the other teams too, but it seems like in this early period, all these players you're playing with are famous players, and they all go on to like bigger things, huge lands, big. They're all in the big early LCS team. Why? How were you playing with these teams, but not like getting into the teams permanently and having more of a career? What was going on in that first year?
Um, so I mean, I was really young back then. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember the SK lineup back then. It was like a tryout. I wasn't really on the team,
Right.
but they needed a jungler for like some kind of tournament, and the jungler just left or something. So I was just tryouting because I think in solo queue I was playing with Ocelot for a bit, and I guess he liked me from solo queue because I was ganking mid lane, so he just wanted to play with me. But I think I was too young, so they had to make a decision before like season 2 Worlds, the qualification or something, and I wasn't able to play in the qualifier with them, so they just got someone else than me.
Okay. Does that mean like you're in solo queue? You said you do well. Were you actually like a prodigy in solo queue? Were you popping off all the time? Were you doing well?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I was like the highest rank in season 2, but I was like top 100 or top 200, I think, but
Oh, okay.
not one of the highest, no.
Okay, because after this, a random piece of trivia, Monte even mentioned it himself, was when they had that first tournament, MLG in America, where it was actually the first time the Koreans came to the West, that famous Blaze team came and just wrecked everyone and only dropped like one game in the whole tournament and bodied TSM where TSM were the kings. People will forget one of the teams at this tournament. It was a weird tournament because it was actually held in like the offices of MLG because it was like a pay-per-view event. It wasn't actually like a big MLG like people think of with thousands of fans. It was like essentially an attempt at pay-per-view. There was a team there called Team Black. Now, everyone knows this detail, that Reckless was on there. So another super young guy. I mean, you guys must only be like 16 at the time or something. And you were playing this team as well. So how did you get in this team and how did you go to America? It must be pretty cool, even with like a no-name team, to get to go to this big land with TSM and Curse and Blaze, etc., right?
Yeah, I mean, this tournament was actually like, I guess, the turning point of my career, like the one that made me able to pursue gaming as a career, I would say, because before this, like, my parents weren't really supportive of me playing video games, so I wasn't really allowed to play video games. Like, this was in the summer break before the school year, so I was able to go there on like basically like in the summer break, I was able to go there, but me going there, they were able to see that there's like some kind of future in gaming because it was all paid for, like the hotel and the travels and stuff, so that basically opened up their minds to me continuing playing video games professionally, basically. So that was like the start of my career, I'd say. And I mean, I guess I just got kind of lucky getting on the team because they just needed a jungler again. It was like a sub thingy. So me and Reckless just subbed in for the AD carry and the jungler. Like, we weren't even on the team. It was just for the tournament. So, I mean, I think they just got us because we were like high-ranked Norwegian or like Scandinavian people. So that's why.
Right. Obviously, later on, years later, like 3+ years later, you actually obviously joined TSM and were one day the jungler for TSM straight up for real. Is it the case that, like, are you one of these people? Because a lot of people don't get this. I know there's a story when I did an interview with Sven, the AD carry player who plays for Cloud9 now. When I talked to him, he said about how Mithy always dreamed of playing for TSM. And that might sound weird to modern fans. Like, what the hell? Like, he played for Origin. He played for all these top teams. But people don't know. Back in, like, season 1, season 2, TSM was a huge brand. It was enormous. And the image it was almost like that if you joined them, you just became famous and you would have money and streams. Are you someone who actually, did you have dreams of joining a big team, joining an American team even back then?
I wouldn't really say so, but of course TSM were really popular. So I think it was kind of like out of my league in that sense because,
Right.
I mean, the TSM OG players had like, I wouldn't say billions of fans, but they had a very large following, and I didn't really have a following at all, so I didn't really feel like that was something that was like in my league, I guess. But yeah, I guess that's just what I'll say.
Right, when you actually came to join the Copenhagen Wolves team I referenced earlier, obviously the most famous name there is Bergsen. This is where Bergsen came from. But I actually know this. In fact, I even did an interview with Bergsen when he was in LCS back in the day in 2013. And people don't know, he was a very, very different person back then. Like I was actually amazed he said yes to the interview. Like you might even remember this. I came up to a whole bunch of you guys and asked you all, and you were all just all shy, like, and almost no. And I'm amazed he just said yes one day. I think it's because I'd done one with Frog and he was a fanboy of like Frog or something. He'd seen it. So like when I did the interview with him, he was super like nervous. He was really polite. He never trash talked anyone. He just seemed like just a nerd kid who just played games. Did you know Bergsen well at this time that you joined this team? What was he like back then?
I mean, I think we played together for like 6 months or something in season 2 before this. So, I mean, we kind of knew each other pretty well from just being young kids, like we're the same age. So I'll say we were pretty good friends. But yeah, I mean, I remember this scenario where you're talking about, by the way, as well, where you arrived to EU LCS asking for interviews.
I asked you as well, right? I think you just said nothing on like, or what, I think it was even like someone like God Bros from the study, like he doesn't want to do interviews. Like, as though he was like your bouncer or something like.
I remember you wearing some kind of hockey shirt or something, and I was really intimidated. I was like, I thought I must have flamed you in solo queue or something.
All right,
and you just came here to take me out.
I see what you mean, right? Because I wasn't wearing like a professional gear, right? Sure.
Yeah. So I was like a little intimidated. So I was just, nah, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. And who was Bergsen at the time? Who was he as a guy?
Yeah, I mean, he was, I would say, he still had the same humor as he does now, so he hasn't changed in that sense, but definitely he's way more outgoing now and has way more confidence, I would say. So I would say on the inside, he's still the same as he was back then, but definitely like he's way better at talking to people and being social now than what he was then.
Along those lines, like in the modern day, because people only know you from the LCS days, where like you put in the work at the gym, you were on a top team, you won championships, you've gotten like a lot better on camera, etc. You're comfortable with fame. Back then, like I said there, I joked about it, but you were a bit more shy too. People might remember there's that famous weird video where you just like shuffling or whatever, where some like friend of yours or whatever put it up. Who was young Svenskeren? Were you a nerd?
I would say I was definitely a nerd, yeah. I was really shy as well, and I think coming into EU LCS, I just wouldn't speak English because I was just so shy of speaking English, and I think it's definitely different now, but back then I was not feeling confident at all in my English capabilities, so that was also why I wouldn't really do content or anything.
Even in the early... go on.
I would just say that I've definitely just grown up, and it's just something that comes with age of just... yeah, getting more confidence, I think.
Even though Bergsen was the big name in the team, that's also in part because of that weird storyline where he couldn't play at like the qualifier because of his age. At the time, they had a restriction if you had to be 17 or whatever to play in LCS. But he was going to turn 17 during the first split, and then famously the team lost all the games, and he came in and did like the Penta or whatever on Syndra, and the rest is history, as it were. As well as Bergsen, I actually remember you were the other player that people often mentioned and said like you had good mechanics or you were a good jungler already. What was the first split like for you? Like, did you actually think like I could be a pro? Do you think you were good enough to play?
I thought I was definitely good enough to play, but the difference in like I would say it was like SK, Fnatic, and Alliance or something. That was like the best teams.
No, more like Gambit at the time, probably. Alliance was next year.
Gambit as well.
EG, you mean the Frogging guys and stuff, right? Sure.
Yeah, that team, yeah. The difference between those and like us, I feel like it wasn't that big. It was more like they knew how to play the macro game of it, and we were even in mechanics, so like even better than those guys, but they just knew how to play the game on like a team thing that we just had no clue about how to play. So that's why there was like this big gap in the league, I think. But yeah, I mean, we definitely knew we were good enough to be in the league.
Another player in your team, obviously, who later transitioned to have a fantastic broadcast career was Deficio, who was the support player. Who was Deficio back before he was this on-camera person? Like, could you ever have imagined that he was he the kind of guy who had the personality where he could have been like a confident on-camera guy like that?
Yeah. I think he's always been very outgoing. I mean, he basically joined the team as like a manager. So he was, I think as a manager, you kind of need to have social skills and you need to know your way around with people and be good at talking, which none of the players had on the team. So that's why he was like really needed for us because, nobody had confidence to talk to anyone outside of him. And I mean, he just basically slotted in as support because we thought that he would just be better than the support we had back then because he wasn't that good, the other guys. So it was pretty weird days. I think Deficio wasn't even high rank in solo queue at all, and he didn't even play support.
Okay.
He wasn't even a support player, so he just like slotted in.
Okay. I mean, the part that I've always wanted to know this detail is, I actually heard, this could be wrong, so you correct me, when they did, if people don't know, in the next split, the team became NIP, and still like Bergsen was there, and Deficio was there, but they brought in basically a bunch of like hired guns. They brought in people who weren't Danish. They brought in like Freeze and like a whole bunch of people, like some of the more famous players people might know. And one of the things I heard was, like that, I know they kicked some of the players to replace them with these big names, but I actually heard maybe like you had the choice to stay or something, but you left because like either out of solidarity with the others or you were annoyed, or did they actually just straight cut you? What was the story?
So I think we were like 2 weeks into the split, and I remember this still. It was like we were playing EU LCS in Russia for some reason. It was in Moscow.
Okay.
And we went like, it was like a super week, and we went 0-3 or something, or like we had a really tough beginning of the split. And basically, Bergsen and Deficio just didn't feel like our top laner and AD carry were playing good at all, and they weren't motivated to play. But yeah, I mean, they wanted to go a different direction, and I just didn't really feel that way. I thought that we could just stick together and just keep it the same. But they wanted to make changes, so I decided to hop out as well. Like, I could have stayed, but I just felt like I didn't want to ruin what we had already. I didn't feel like it was justified, the benchings.
Okay. That's a pretty bold move. Like, I mean, as you're saying, to be fair, back then, like you talked about the story about Deficio and hopping in and out of teams, obviously the scene was a lot less professional, and actually people really did pick people up out of solo queue or like a friend of a friend. At the same time, it's a pretty big gamble though, right? If once you made it to LCS, to go back down again, you don't know if you're going to get back in again. It's a pretty bold move to do.
Oh yeah, it was really stupid, just in hindsight. In hindsight, I should have stayed, definitely. Okay. I think it was really dumb of me, but obviously it kind of worked out in the end. But yeah that time period where after I left and until I joined SK Gaming was really a really dangerous arc in my career, I would say.
When you actually came to join this SK Gaming team, it's basically the same players. They just had NIF initially and then they got nRated. That people will know from the next year where you actually had very good performances and you were in finals and going to Worlds and stuff. When you came on this SK Gaming team, one of the things is, I remember some of these other players, it was actually, a lot of people didn't think this team was going to be good. They all thought yeah, these are players that have been in the EU LCS, but these were like the bottom teams. Like Freddy122 was on like AAA and was just like, or whatever player. Obviously at this point in his career, like Candy Panda was sort of maybe not considered a top player anymore. The Jesus guy was barely known, actually. He was just coming into the scene. Did you have high expectations for this team when you joined it? Did you know the other players?
I didn't really think that the team was going to be like that good because I think they lost like the star players coming when I came in. And it was just like, we just need to field players, basically, was what it felt like. And even the guy recruiting me was NIF. And I mean, I knew a lot about him and I talked to him a lot in the past, but even I knew joining the team he was leaving it. So it was like,
if people don't know, you had the offer to go to Alliance already, basically, after you qualified, right?
Yeah, so he was like not even staying, and he was kind of the biggest name on the team when I joined. So it was kind of like a little weird, but I also want to go back a little before then because I was, if you remember the original Super Hot Crew team, me and Freddy were playing on that team, and we were the ones that kind of founded it with like the other guys. And then I was gonna stay on that team, but since it was all done online back then, there was the online qualifiers for the EU LCS. Like, we played it one time and we couldn't compete because we got DDoSed the whole time. So we couldn't even. It wasn't even though we knew we were good enough to play in the EU LCS qualifier, or like qualified for the EU LCS. I wasn't confident enough to stay in the team because the one time it already got hindered by getting DDoSed. So I was like, okay, I just need to make the EU LCS 100%. So I joined a team that was already qualified to the LAN part of that event, which was SK Gaming. So I think my whole career might have been different if there was no DDoSing going on back then.
Yeah, the funny thing is, though, as you say about the NIF angle, that's another reason why I remember no one believing in this squad, because not only had Ocelot, etc., and Kevin, these massive names, gone from the lineup, but there was also that stupid thing where even though you'd won like DreamHack and then you came to this qualifier, and if people don't know, this promotion thing, like NIF was amazing in this series. He was like carrying loads of the games. It was already known he's going to leave anyway, so it's sort of like the team's going to be worse on paper. Now, to be fair, nRated was formerly in Fnatic and stuff. Did you know nRated before you joined this team? What was the concept when he was coming in?
So I didn't know nRated. I didn't really know him, but I've just heard like rumors, like bad rumors about him. That's why he was leaving Fnatic or getting kicked from Fnatic. So I didn't really have anything positive thoughts about him joining, because he was getting kicked off the best team. So I kind of thought some negative things, but yeah.
Right, here's the thing. This is where we go into a classic Thorin narrative that I'm supposed to have invented, right? Which is all I'll say is everyone looks at all the teams that nRated were on. He was on like the Against All Authority back in the day, which was very good. Then he was on SK Gaming, like this one that was in finals and stuff. He was in Fnatic, it was in winning the championship in LCS. And then later on you had the Forgiven lineup that was one of the best. He's in a lot of teams where he's one of the main parts that stays through it. So I'm not saying he did it all, but he seemed to me, like, especially from conversation, he seemed like a very cerebral player, actually, somebody who understood, like, map concepts. And this is a long time ago, mate. Like, the joke is, like, in the modern day, there's still players who don't think about the waves and stuff in their lane or don't necessarily always understand how, like, map pressure works. He actually had a lot of these concepts down from when I talked to him back in the day. So it's possible I could have overblown it and made it sound like he was, like, the genius mega mind and you were all just peons. And I know because Jesus was on this team. If you know Jesus' personality, he would never allow you to suggest, like, anyone other than him came up with all the plans and all that stuff. Because that's just who he is. It's his own style. He has his own marketing approach. So what I want to ask is this, though. What did I go too far with that angle? Like, was nRated like a sort of a leader figure, or was he some of the guy coming up with some other stuff? Was it a general team effort? Did everyone contribute something? What was it like on this SK team?
This brings back some good memories. I remember that story about Jesus coming on here and saying that stuff. That was not good for the team morale, for sure. I think in the past, I definitely didn't value nRated like as much as I should have. I think when I was like 17, 18 years old, and he was basically the like adult of the team, and we didn't really know how to play the game, but we thought we did. We were really cocky, and he was like the old guy, just wanting to be heard, kind of, but we were just like kind of ignoring him and wanting to play our own game, kind of. But I think he was really smart about the game, and that's why he was always on good teams. And I think we just didn't really appreciate him back then. Like, definitely Jesus as well with the story you're telling.
Sure.
A little bit too cocky.
He was also young as well, if people don't know. This is years before he was in Fnatic and all those other teams that everyone remembers it when he became a coach later. Right, along those lines, though, like I say, I set it up this way because in that first split, people are going to forget this. This is the split that has the Alliance Super Team. It has, obviously, Fnatic still. This is when Fnatic even got reckless and they were like one of the top teams. But in the regular split, this SK Gaming team won the most games and finished in first place. And in the actual playoffs, went to the finals. Now, yes, you lost to the Expect Insoas and Reckless Lab, etc. But that result alone was almost like a miracle. I remember it turned a lot of heads. A lot of people thought, wow, his teams must be way better than we thought. Like, who are these names? Like, what did you think of this split with the team?
It was just going really great. I think like we had some arguments and stuff, but we were able to just resolve it very easily. We didn't really have any stubborn people on the team. It was just like, I remember there was like some arguments, me and Candy Panda or something, but it was just over immediately. And then we were just able to play the way we wanted to play. And I think also just people were able to make a lot of compromises. Like, I wanted to play the way I wanted to, and then everyone on the team was just like they're okay with it. You know, they didn't want to complain about me taking all the farm or me just doing whatever the fuck I wanted. They were just okay with it. So that's why we were able to just be so good, I think.
Did you think you could win that final? Did you think you could beat Fnatic and win? I know for nRated, because of his history with them, like he actually was super motivated, so he really wanted to sort of have like the fuck you moment.
Before going into the finals, we had some stupid ass meeting. I remember that we're all talking about like, is it worth it for us to win this finals? Like,
okay. What's that mean?
Do we really want to win this? Because the winner gets a shorter break going into the next split.
Okay.
And the winner has to go to MSI. So that means you...
Oh, right. Yes, it was the All-Stars, but yeah, it was like the precursor to MSI, right? Yes.
It was the All-Stars, yeah. So yes. It wasn't even MSI back then. It was just like a fan thing.
It's the same format though, yeah.
Like, there was just like no break. So we had some stupid ass meeting. We were talking about like, do we actually really want to win this? And people in the meeting were like, it doesn't really matter too much. Like, we can kind of chill. But then obviously on the game day, everyone's mind were completely different. And we were all trying our life off. But I just remember this meeting where everyone was like so chill, like, it doesn't really matter too much. But obviously when it was game day, we all changed our mind pretty quickly.
Okay. I mean, in the next split, this was quite an interesting one because it was one of those splits, if people remember, it was one of those ones where like there was a lot of turnover as to who the top teams were and who was good. And your team actually managed to get into you were in the semis against the Alliance team that won the split. And even though they win this series like 3-1, dude, I remember I've been back and watched these games a bunch of times. I'm a FORG1VEN fan anyway. Right? And when you watch these games, I'm not even joking. I swear your team is just leading in every game. And you're in positions to potentially win in every game. And even though, yeah, they had amazing players, like I think all their players got like, you know, all pro, whatever that split. Like, and again, people underrated SK. Like this was a really winnable series. Like, you could have been in the finals again, right?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think, if I remember correctly, I think FORG1VEN was just 1v9 that whole series, and I think he was playing to Stanamid or something.
Yep.
Something that we had no experience playing against, and it was just so OP, and we just kind of like undervalued it, but he was just 1v9ing on it. So I think we could have definitely made the finals, but yeah, I think he just was a little too good there.
Was it a big deal to win the third place match and get to go to Worlds, to know that you go into the first World Championship of your career?
Yeah, I mean, it was massive. That was... The whole thing just mattered. Like, we didn't really care too much about winning the split. Obviously, yeah, we wanted to win it, but it was more about going to Worlds. That was like the whole thing about playoffs. The number one priority is just making it to Worlds.
By the way, in this version of the team, because obviously in the next year you got in FORG1VEN and you changed out Genesis and Fox came in and it was a slightly different lineup. People will know then, like people know like that's part of what made FORG1VEN so famous. He was the MVP and all that. In the lineup before, like I say, if you look on paper, like this team really shouldn't be that good, mate. Like I know obviously teams in sports and esports aren't just like the strength of the players. It's like how you fit together and how you play around, what you plan for and stuff. Would you agree? Like I didn't think these players were so crazy. Like if I'm doing like my top X list for each role, I probably wouldn't have that many SK players in. Maybe you might have made like my jungler top 3 or something, but what do you think? Was this team like one of those ones that was like more than the sum of its parts?
I mean, definitely. I think we just knew how to play together as a team, and we had nobody with big egos, basically, except for me, maybe. Like my playstyle was very much ego focused, but everyone else on the team was just able to make compromises that we could talk to each other about how we wanted to play the game. I think that's what a lot of teams probably missed back then, is like having conversations with each other. I remember we had so many conversations about how we wanted to play, and we were doing replays, like reviews basically. And I don't think a lot of other teams were doing reviews back then.
Right.
Or it wasn't as serious. I mean, I remember we got in Johnsen as our coach because
he was banned at the time. Yeah.
He was banned at the time, and he just came in and lived with us, basically. So
what would he actually do when you said he was the coach? I always wondered that.
I mean, he was there to play solo queue, and then he would watch our scrim sometimes, but he was just playing solo queue while we were scrimming for the most part.
Fair enough.
But it was helpful because he was able to help Jesus improve a lot, because, I mean, back then, Johnsen was like one of the best laners in the whole world, I'd say, and Jesus was not that good in laning, so he definitely learned a thing or two from him.
Right, obviously, before I talk about Worlds, I've got a very delicate question to ask you about. So famously, when you were in the boot camp and you played on solo queue, you got banned from playing the first 3 games of Worlds because of something you typed in chat to a player who, as far as I know, something like he'd entered the game, or you would just, like, people don't know back then, people wouldn't just type in the like actual lobby. They also would do stuff just like add you as a friend, even though you'd know like what was coming up if you just entered them or whatever. And then they obviously everyone would just rage chat to each other there. And I will just add this is not a justification or excuse, but I will add this context that people don't know, which is to this day, look how many of the players who've been banned in League, especially pros, chat restricted or outright banned by Riot, are Danish. Because I'll tell you, people don't know that Denmark is different from like Sweden, which is way more sort of like PC. It's definitely different like UK, America, etc. I'll just say to this day, there's been loads of people in CSGO where they're all the Danish ones who've had like the edgy jokes, or they've maybe gone like a little bit too far and they got in trouble. So I do feel as though like the gaming culture in Denmark, people do go a bit harsh. But what would you tell me about this scenario where basically it was claimed like you were racist? Basically, I would say it was like racially insensitive, the things you typed. So what would you say about the situation where you got banned? And also, like, what was it actually like to just get the call and find out you just banned for 3 games? Because that's pretty crazy punishment back then. People would maybe get like chat restricted, like I said, they wouldn't get an actual pro punishment usually.
I mean, if I can just start it out with like maybe telling the whole story.
Yeah, go on.
So originally it was my summoner name. So I added a guy from solo queue, and I mean, no excuses. Obviously, this was really stupid of me, and I shouldn't have made the name I made. It was, really not appropriate. So I added a guy from solo queue, and I asked him if my name was like appropriate, if it was okay, because there was just some guy from Taiwan. Obviously, like I wasn't trying to like be racist or.
Oh, you actually legitimately were asking him, like, is this name okay? Because obviously people thought you were doing that, like, sort of like troll face, like, is this name okay? Because it was like,
organizing,
right,
bullying, but I was actually just asking, is this name okay? Like, should I change my name, basically, in that manner? But he was like, yes, it's great, I like it. And then the next thing I get told is that I've been banned, or I should make an apology. So definitely it's my fault. It's nobody else's fault. I'm not trying to say that. It's just those screenshots of me asking, that is why. And I mean, it was just fucking stupid, and I shouldn't have done it.
Right, I see what you mean, though. It was worse than it looked, though, because as I say, people thought that you were also like, we're going out of your way to fuck with this guy and sort of like to put it in his face, right? Yeah,
yes,
I see what you mean, right.
That was not my intention at all. And also I think just the way I was raised, and just I had no information on different cultures, and my whole life has just been Danish people only.
Right.
And there is just edgy jokes, I would say, that comes along with that, and I've just had to do a lot of growing up and learning about different cultures to just be more sensitive and knowing of issues that just exist in the world. And I mean, also when so moving on from that, like the next question was when I got told. It was just crazy to me. I was so caught off, and everyone on the team as well were just like, what is going on? This is absolutely crazy. I remember being invited up. So at the time when I got told, all the teams are like in a hotel, and you have your practice rooms. And so SK Gaming has their own practice room in the hotel. It's just a room made into 5 PCs added in there. And the Riot has their own floor, basically. So I got invited up to the head of esports. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was like Nick Allen or something at the time. And he just like sat me down one-on-one, and he's like, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're banned for 3 games. That's it. I'm just like, holy shit, this is crazy. And that's when it kind of just set in, like, wow, this is absolutely insane what I did. And I was just devastated from it.
The other thing that was really insane about the ban, especially being actual pro games out of Worlds itself, is, as people will know, because this is the one time actually Bergsen got out of groups at Worlds, he managed to go to the quarters, is that's like the dream group if you're a Western team, because there's no Korean team there. And at the time, everyone knows Koreans was unbeatable. This was where you had like, even the Starhorn Royal Club team that obviously went to the finals, no one even knew they were that good at the time. They were like 2nd or 3rd seed from China. Like they even had those like Korean players in, so no one knew if they could com. TSM's there, who you hope at least should be competitive with. They're a top LCS team, we're a top ELCS team. And then the other team was like, was actually TPA or something. I think it was actually a Taipei team or whatever. So in this scenario, before that, you must have thought, like in the boot camp, we've got a chance to actually get out of this group. And obviously, almost the team did. It's just they had to play the first 3 games with Gileas. Like, was the team able to actually still mentally keep it together and believe it was possible to qualify?
I mean, going into the Worlds, yeah, we thought we were definitely going to make it far. I mean, we were a really good team, and we knew we were a good team, so we weren't scared of anyone in the group. I mean, obviously it changed a bit after I got banned. I think there's not much to say. Like, I think the team morale probably got hurt from that a lot. And I mean, if I could say some words to my former teammates, because back then, like, I don't think I told them sorry, really. I remember I cried in some media with them. I was literally bawling my eyes out, but I never really apologized. So I would just like to say I'm very sorry for those comments, especially nRated, Jessis and Freddy and Candy Panda. Like, I thought we were a really good team, and I know they never got the chance to go to Worlds again after that. I mean, some of them did, but I know Candy Panda and nRated not, and I thought, that we could have done way better than what we actually did. So I'm just sorry about that.
By the way, just as a piece of trivia, because this is something I knew secretly at the time, but didn't actually come out till years later, is it's not just because he hated TSM, but at the time, Monte, who lived in Korea, and obviously this event was in Korea, right? It's true, he did used to go and visit like Western team houses when they were there and see how people practice. But he even told me he was sort of like helping out or like doing some secret coaching with your team. So is that accurate? Like, did he actually do anything?
I mean, I remember him being there. I think he was friends with nRated or something, so nRated just like invited him over. Everyone else were kind of like, what is he doing here? Like, he's not on our team, but we're kind of cool with it, I guess. I remember him being there for some scrims, and I just have one like experience that I remember was like he was telling us about split map, how the Koreans are playing like a split map, horizontal or vertical jungle clearing or something, and I just remember everyone on the team just didn't know what the fuck he was talking about.
Right, okay.
Like, what the fuck does that mean? We just played a game, bro. This is weird as hell. But I mean,
the joke is he was right. That was what Samsung Wyatt was doing, right?
Yeah, he knew his stuff, and he was right. But we just came from like a completely different way of viewing the game, and it just didn't really make sense to me. So, I was also really shy back then, so I didn't really ask him anything. I was like, okay, that's what he's saying. I'm going to play the game I think I should play, and that's it.
Okay. Right. When the next year came along, obviously, like I said, the big move was FORG1VEN, who used to be himself in a different version of Copenhagen Wolves, and everyone knew was like really mechanically skilled and on solo queue and all that jazz. He got to join your team. And I know at the time, actually, there was a bunch of teams trying to get him. I also heard when I did an interview with him that the other player that could have joined this team was actually Sven, was the guy, Niels, who joined Origin instead, right? In this off season, does that mean because of the results of the team before, like SK was actually in a position where you could get top players, like you were trying to become like one of the top teams? Like, do you remember trying out these 2 players or seeing who you were going to get? What were your thoughts on the fact FORG1VEN was coming? Like, did you already know he was a flamer?
So in the off season, I remember I was given a lot of power about the roster. I think the CEO basically just told me like they're gonna get who I want to play with, and we were trying out both Sven and FORG1VEN, but it was just online. So Sven was just not saying anything in the scrims. He was really good, but he just wasn't really communicating at all. And FORG1VEN was just also really good, but he was communicating a bit more. So I think we just kind of went with the guy that was communicating a little more in the scrims. And also, I remember going into that off season, I just told the CEO, like, I don't care if they're toxic or not. Like, if they're good, we should get them. And obviously that
famous last words before getting FORG1VEN, of course. Yes. Yeah. If people don't know, now it's so many years gone and he hasn't played in years. But if you hit him up, he'd be cool. Like, but at the time, obviously, this stuff was really serious. Like, if people don't know, I've known a lot of his teammates. Like, he is probably the hardest player ever to play with, like, in a team. Because I've told some of these stories before. Like, he had this weird thing where he didn't get that he was being toxic. He thought he was just sort of like reacting, and then he really would after the game just be like, "Hey, you want to get food?" And then people are like, "What the fuck? You just told me I'm total shit and subhuman because I didn't do a gank or something." Like, give me a story. What's it like to play with FORG1VEN?
I mean, I don't like talking poorly about my former teammates. Really, I think he was good at the game, but definitely socially he was lacking, I would say. So I don't know. I've never played with a guy before in my life that has made every single teammate of mine able to cry. Like, it was like a weekend, and he's already made every single person on the team cry, and that was just like unheard of to me before. It never happened before, so that was like the scope of his toxicity, I would say.
The problem is that thing you said to the CEO initially seemed like it was working, mate, because everyone remembers the reason he won the MVP is like, I don't think he died for like the first 8 games. He could play like Graves and Caitlyn, all his champions at the time. He was just smashing everyone. All the other ADCs even say he was like the best, the joke is by far, and he could just dominate anyone. People remember you were actually one of the other stars at the time. Like, you were a really mechanical jungler. You played the Lee Sin and stuff. Like, did you actually in the game have good like rapport and work together? Did you just play? What was it like? How are you be able to be so good?
I mean, I think it was just because he was really skilled at the game and I was really skilled at the game. It wasn't really because we're playing well together. It's just like, you go in solo queue and you have 5 of the best players in the world together. Like, you're gonna win the game no matter who you're playing against. It's not really fun playing well together as a team, I would say. That's not why.
One thing I always wondered along these lines, though, is like one of the things because I was actually like friends with Forgiven for a long time and talked to him behind the scenes, but I even told him like the thing that sort of broke me and I had to be like, you are pretty toxic, mate, was when he played with Jankos, and already Jankos was really good. And then he was telling me Jankos is crap and Jankos is the wrong flint. And I'm like, bro, there's no one could be good enough for you. Like, at the time you were also like a top player. If he was flaming the other people, it's one thing. Did you actually have a decent relationship in the game? Like, did he think you were a good player? Did you come well together, do you think?
I don't remember him flaming me that much. I don't really have any specific examples in my head.
Okay.
I just remember him being really hard to work with, and basically we were known for our team play and doing reviews and stuff, but the moment he joined the team, we never had a full 5-man review because he refused to do reviews.
Right.
And every single draft meeting, he would be on Facebook instead of helping us with the draft. He wouldn't give any input. He would, in a best of 5, he would, between the games, go on Facebook to tweet and just like things about the game. And it was just crazy to me. And we were basically okay with it because, I mean, as long as he's playing well, like, he can do whatever he wants, okay? But, yeah, I mean, he was not a good teammate to have on the team for sure.
I remember though, actually, in this period of time, I just have a good memory for these things, that the actual like styles of you and him and the rest of the team actually matched up really well. Like, if people remember, of course, his style was you just push them at enemy bot lane under their turret all day long, and as soon as you can, you take the first turret basically immediately. That actually worked really well because basically your style kept the jungle away. You were just invaded all the time, and that's why everyone had that joke back then. Like, this is where nRated is smart. Like, you knew media. People would have flamed you, mate, because back then junglers actually had to place wards, and you were fucking never placing them. But the premise was because you were just really good at fucking up the other jungler. They joked like that you were just the ward. You were like moving through their side of the map, and they could see you. Do you remember this angle? Because it was like, partly it was true, but it was also kind of like a clever way to frame it.
Yeah, I do remember this. I mean, nRated had a good way with words. So I remember being just I didn't really know what else to do in the game, so that's just what I did, I guess. It wasn't really because we thought, hey, this is a good way to win the game and it's working for us. It's more like, I just play the way I feel like I should be playing. Don't need to think about it. Just do what I think is right, and everyone else just kind of adapt to that.
Right. One thing that I actually do remember, though, is this is where being the big name can also screw you over if you're forgiven, because everyone remembers that when you guys lost in the semis in the 5th game and then you lost in the 3rd place game in the 5th game, everyone remembers the narrative was like, oh, they just banned out all of Forgiven's champions, which is partly true. They did on some of the games. But the part is that you actually sort of skated on this, because I also noticed if you go back, they also sort of banned you out in some of these games too, and some of your champions out. So did you also feel like the opponent essentially, like, did the opponent find the right, like, was it just that the team played the games badly, or did the opponent like do some good drafts that sort of limited how you could play? What would you say?
I mean, I think back then there was like, I don't remember. I think Forgiven had 2 or 3 champions that he could play, and the enemy would just deny those. And I think I was only playing like Lee Sin, and then everything else was like a bit below that, so they just denied that as well. And yeah, I mean, the other players on the team were really never really given the chance to like really step up, because the whole split we've just been playing like this and it's been winning, so they never really had a chance to really step up. And when we needed it in the playoffs, because the teams and like our opponents found a way to really counter that, then yeah, it was just like too late.
Right, the story, obviously I've only heard one side of it, so I'm going to ask you now. The story goes, right, officially, FORG1VEN was like kicked, and then he obviously went into that weird Gambit team, and you guys brought Candy Panda back, and people know the next split went terribly. You lost loads of games, eventually the team got relegated, right? What I heard from the FORG1VEN side was, this is why I want to know if it's true. He claims he was the one who was like given almost like what you said in the offseason. You got like the choice of what you could say how the roster is. He claims it was actually him who got given the choice. And they were basically like, look, if you have problems with people, we'll kick them if you want. And it was implied you were the person he had maybe had problems with. And we'll kick them and you can stay and we'll build. Now he claims, this is why he's a strange guy. Because even though he's a bit toxic, he also does actually think of himself sort of like a hero in almost an anti-hero, I guess, like in a Game of Thrones sense. So he actually does think he has like honor, essentially. And he claims he would never want to be the person who got someone fired. So he just let himself get kicked and then he went and joined the Gambit team, right? Do you know any of this? Is this accurate? Like, was it more? Because I could also imagine like the rest of the team must have been like, just get this guy out of there. Like, how did it actually go down? Do you remember?
That's not, I mean, it could be true for his point of view. You know, maybe the CEO told him like, hey, what lineup do you want to play with next split? And then he probably just said that. But also the CEO probably tells every single player on the team, hey, who do you want to play with next
split? Could be,
so
right.
We all probably just said, hey, we don't want to play with this guy. And that's why we move forward not having him on the team.
Is it only because the team got relegated that like it looks bad now? Like, would you have regretted it anyway? Like, should you have stuck out the year and then just split apart? What do you think?
No matter what, FORG1VEN was off the team after Spring Split. Nobody on the team could handle playing with him any longer. It was too much mentally stressing. Like, nobody could handle it. So no matter what, he was gone.
How did you handle, though, having a split that was so terrible after having all these good ones before and all these lineups that were good? It must have been pretty hard, right, to be losing all these games and then it's pretty humiliating also to get kicked out of the LCS.
I mean, it was really bad, yeah. We thought we could just keep Fox and we thought we could just bring Candy Panda back, but obviously, we kind of lost that synergy we had the year before with Jessus and Candy Panda. I think Candy Panda came off a pretty long break of not really playing the game, and yeah, he just didn't have the motivation anymore to just play the game at a high level anymore. And Fox just wasn't what Jessus was. He was just a very different player, so we couldn't really do the same formula that we had the year before. And obviously, yeah, it ended up with us being relegated.
Obviously, people are going to think because of the connection between you and Bergsen, he must have been the one who got you into TSM. Is that accurate?
I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, it might be. I didn't really ask him if he's the one that brought me over, you know, because I did get a message from like Bergsen before joining, like, hey, are you under contract? But that could have been him or Reggie, you know.
When you actually got this offer, like, again, the reason I set that up earlier is almost no one would turn down a TSM offer. There's actually only very rarely, like, it's only people like Expect It, as far as I know, who was so gangster. They were like, no thanks. Almost everyone else would say yes. Like, TSM didn't have the same bad rep back then. People don't know. Yeah, they were considered like sort of evil, but that was more like in a wrestling way, if you know what I mean, like the Undertaker. No, they weren't really supposed to be actually evil. They were just supposed to be a bit douchey or whatever, and they had annoying fans. Like, when you got this offer, this must have been an amazing offer. I bet the money was fucking insane compared to what SK Gaming paid.
So I had a very different viewing of it back then, because back then the only reason why I would go to NA is I wanted to win a championship. That was the only reason why. I wanted to win before I would retire from the game, to just have some kind of legacy in the game. And already back then I was thinking like, this is probably not going to last too much longer. I need to figure out like what I'm going to do after esports. Here I'm like 8 years later, you know, still in esports, but it was a very different time back then. And yeah, my whole idea of joining TSM were basically like, I don't really want to go to NA, but also, me staying in EU is pretty unlikely of me winning the EU LCS, because the teams like, it was like Fnatic were winning every single split, and Fnatic never gave me an offer, so I was like, okay, I'll go over there and see if I can win over there instead. And yeah, I mean, TSM were like a legendary organization, so I also had a lot of confidence joining them.
Right. One thing that people might not remember is obviously the lineup began with that weird one where YellOwStaR was initially in the team, and it was supposed to be like a super team on paper. And then you guys lost in the finals to the CLG team, which is why everyone got like Double F got memed on because his whole team beat him with like the new player, etc. Do you remember what the problems of this team was? I remember it was also the one that had that weird thing where they brought in Woodbuck, who was like a former like like, he wasn't even actually like a baseball coach. He was a guy who'd like done some baseball and a little bit of coaching, and then he got brought in. And this was like an early example of someone trying to do that thing of like, we'll bring in an outside coach to, you don't have to know the game. And obviously he got fired before the split even ended. So this sounds like it was a messy split, but was the team ever actually good, do you think, in this split? Were things ever coming together? Did it sit like, did he ever regret moving there or think it was going to shit? What was going on?
I mean, during the regular split, it was terrible. Yeah, we were really bad, and nobody really knew what the other people on the team like wanted or how to play together as a team. It was just like everyone playing for themselves, and that's it. Like just 5 players with ego. And I mean, I also think just Doublelift and YellOwStaR just didn't play well together at all. Like YellOwStaR had a very different idea on how to play the game, and Doublelift just wanted to play for lane only. That was not how YellOwStaR was playing in EU. He was like just roaming the whole time and not really playing too much to bot lane. So yeah, we already had like really stylistically differences on how we wanted to play the game. And yeah, regular split was just terrible. But I would say in the playoffs, we really came together as a team, and kind of people made compromises, like Doublelift made compromises to YellOwStaR, and that's why we were able to play a lot better in the playoffs.
Would you say that, like, as you just mentioned there, like, obviously it was the difference in playing style. Like, classically, Doublelift is just like, it's like the Forgiven. It's like, we just smashed the lane. Whereas, yeah, YellOwStaR already understood concept. Like, the joke is, this is season 5 and 6. He was already doing the Roman style, which is now, it's just all that support even does. It's like the most famous thing in the game. Right? It's implied at the time that, like, people think maybe also, like, YellOwStaR just went there for, like, the paycheck, or, like, I think he'd even thought of retiring the year earlier. He was going to do, like, well, it's kind of like you wanted one last year, or go there to win it. Do you think there was was actually YellOwStaR having problems in the game, do you think? Or was it, I mean, what would you say the issue was?
I mean, definitely. YellOwStaR wasn't as good as he was in the past, but I think we could have made it work if we just kind of accepted that instead of like just being toxic, I'd say. Like, I think there was a lot of arguments that didn't really need to be there, but I think we didn't work well together as a team, and that's just how I'd like to leave it.
This was the split, though, where in the playoffs you had that ridiculous series, which should be celebrated, but it's itself a meme, which, as everyone knows, this is when that Immortals team came along and they paid everyone like $1 bazillion, and they were wrecking everyone in the regular split. No one could ever mess with these guys. And then famously in that semi-final, not only did you guys just sweep them completely, but this was the infamous one where they were doing the like Lucian top or whatever the fuck it was, like some ridiculous draft. And I think that what people even said was like, whoever they scrimmed on the other side of the bracket, like that just must have worked against that team, and then it just didn't work fundamentally. So is that too much of the movie book version? Were you actually just a better team than what? How did you win the series? Everyone thought they were going to win the split.
So IMT during that split was just insane. They're like way better than anyone else, and I think just like, I don't remember our win rate in scrims against them, but it must have been really low. Anytime we played them, we just got smashed, and that like Huni would just always play like Quinn top or Lucian top, yeah, like stuff that just win lane really hard, and he would just roam and perma-roam, kill everyone, and we just couldn't do anything against it. So I can imagine going into playoffs, he felt like he was just gonna just do the same as he does in scrims, just smash everyone. But I think going into playoffs, we came together as a team, and yeah, I mean, we were able to just play together as a team that we weren't able to do in the past, so that's why we were good.
Was it the case, because obviously the other player that they had was, they got Huni and Reignover from Fnatic, and people will know, this split especially, it's the reason why after this, Reignover got like some ridiculous contract for like $1 million or something mental from Team Liquid, because all the junglers at the time and all the coaches told me, like, he's a genius, like he's just figured out jungle and a win. Was it accurate? Was he like ahead of the game in some sense?
Yeah, I think Reignover was really good back then. I think he was like the hardest one to play against, like any time I played. I remember in season 5, he was also in EU when I was in EU, and he was also just really smart about the game. And then we both moved to NA at the same time in season 6, and I had to keep playing against him, and he was my competition too then. Like, I don't remember anyone else really in NA back then I was playing against. It was just me versus Reignover, basically. So yeah, I mean, he was definitely really good at the game.
Obviously, this is when the YellOwStaR swap came and in came Biofrost. And the next split and the playoffs, must be one of the best of your career, mate, because this is the one where people will know this is when they had the best of 3 format in the split, and you guys lost 1 series. You won 17 series and lost 1. And then in the playoffs, it was pretty easy. You just sort of just pushed everyone aside. Like, what was this? This must have been one of the best splits of your career, right?
I mean, it was really fun. I remember just having a lot of good times. Like, it wasn't stressful at all. Like, we were kind of cruising, I would say. I think our competition was just like IMT. I think IMT was still strong in the summer split, but I think we narrowly beat them or something during the regular split. And they also had like a really crazy scoreline at the end. I think we just had 1 more win than them or something. But yeah, I mean, it was a good split for us for sure, and a lot of fun.
Right, when you got to go to Worlds this time, I think this is the most infamous one, because even though the next year it was bad, etc., this is the one where coming into the tournament before the group draw, people really thought TSM could go to, like, at the time, what the limit was, like semi-finals of Worlds, or, I mean, from the stories that leaked out of, like, scrims or whatever, maybe they could even be in a final or something really crazy for a Western team. I mean, you had this regular season dominance in LCS. People thought this like, people like Douglas and Bergsen are supposed to be world class. When you came into this Worlds, right, you already told the story on a Crackdown episode we did, that, like, before Worlds basically even began, everyone was just flaming the shit out of you in the scrims, just telling you you're garbage or whatever. And it was sort of implied, but you didn't say it on the Crackdown. Might have been Reginald who said that, and he was saying it not just to you, but to the whole team, maybe. Can you give me some thoughts on that? Because this is the one that I always thought from the outside looked really bad, because it was where the team had well done, and you'd had all the success, and everyone had big expectations, but obviously got knocked out in the group. So give me some thoughts on this. Like, obviously now these Reggie stories, everyone has one at this point in time, but was it Reggie that was the one flaming the team? How did this boot camp go to shit? Like, this could have been such a good tournament, right?
I think what you're talking about is definitely 2017 Worlds.
Oh, my bad.
I mean,
Okay.
16 Worlds is a little different.
Okay, tell me this one then.
I mean, we had a lot of confidence as a team because we're just kind of smashing our boot camp and we're doing really well. Like, also, I remember we had a boot camp in Korea before going to NA. So, and we're doing like triple block every single day for like, I don't remember how long.
Yes.
Well, I just remember being so burned out that it was just like a blessing finally stopping scrims. It was like so crazy. I don't think I've ever practiced as hard as that Worlds bootcamp as the 2016 Worlds. That was just unheard of. But yeah, I mean, the mood was really good, and I remember going to Worlds feeling really confident that year.
Well, I mean, that's what you're talking about there. If people don't know, is you were basically copying like the Asian style scrim blocks or what they used to do. But the difference is, I always say this, like, if you're a fan, it's easy to go, just practice as much as the LPL does. But it's like, you don't know what the culture's like there. Like, they really have an insane mindset. And then basically, if someone like can't handle it and burns out, they just kick you out and replace you with someone else. Like, it's not like, oh, sorry, you take a time off, like mental health break or something. There's not that stuff over there as far as I can tell. They don't actually seem to think about the game the same way. So can you give me some thoughts on what this is like? Because I'll give you a quick example. I used to know someone in StarCraft 2 who was from Norway, a player called Snoot, and he tried the same thing. He heard like these stories that Koreans just play, like, I think in StarCraft it was something insane, like 40 or 50 games in a day. And so he decided, right, for like 6 months or something, he was just going to do this. He was going to make himself, no matter what, play 40 or 50 games. And he told me that even like a few months in, you sort of like lose your mind. And he said if stuff would happen, like in his dreams, all his dreams were just StarCraft games of like him. And he said literally, like, he actually felt like he had to stop just for, like, it was really unhealthy to play that much. So can you give me some sense? Because I remember after this, famous Ian Weldon sort of said, I wouldn't actually ever put a team through that again. Like, it was too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like specific examples, but I just remember being so overworked that I'm pretty sure I had dreams about League 2. I'm pretty sure we all did on the teams, just even in our dreams, just stressing out about League and shit we need to improve on. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely tough, but I would say those kind of boot camps is what makes it so fun as well, because we all are working on something together as a team, and you can't really get that anywhere else in your life than in something competitive like this. You can never really get 5 or 6 guys on the same mindset like that, and just there's nothing else mattering than just trying to improve and really be good at this thing. So that's just why it's so special to me.
Right, obviously the group was hard because it had RNG from China, it had Samsung from Korea, and then people forget the fourth team was the Splice team from Denmark, EU LCS. Like, actually, like, if the worst teams, like the EU squad, like, you can tell it's like the group of death essentially for a team like yours. But even so, like, technically people didn't know that Samsung was going to be that good and go to the final. There's a world where, I mean, you did win a game against, like, where you could have beaten RNG. People thought this was possible. Do you think you should have gotten out of this group?
Back then, yes, I definitely think we should have made it out. There were some excuses or some outside factors that limited our performance, I would say. I think that if I remember, Bergsen got really sick during the tournament.
Right.
He basically couldn't even speak during like some games. So we were just playing a game without our mid laner. Our shot caller, Thorin. So it was definitely like wonky. I remember that, and I remember our bot lane just not really knowing what champs are good right now. So we were playing like range supports against YellOwStaR, and YellOwStaR was just 1v9ing the whole game. So yeah, I think we practiced some of the wrong stuff going into the tournament. That kind of was our downfall. So yeah.
As Mary J. Blige said in her track, All I Need, you're all I need to get by, which is the case for me and my Patreon community who support this channel and these videos. Some of them include Theogony, Matt Pognaccio Racula, Ahmed Haju, Joseph Adcock, Tosh, Bot Pounder 420, Toucan, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Gore, Yerka, and a special thanks always to the main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask a question in my regular video AMA? Do you want teasers? Find out who upcoming guests are. Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content, or you want to take part in one of those longer esports discussions with me where we go all over the place. Well, if any of those grab your fancy, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Risk Illuminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.